So, welcome everyone to our weekly workshop. Let's give it a second for others to join. All right, let's wait a bit. So, thank you very much for joining. So, as always, the purpose of this workshop is to give you information that you can act on, and I'll be adding additional workshops to expand on the theme of cash flow. So, let's begin. So, this workshop is purposely organized in a very simple three-part discussion. We're going to quickly move through some theory and steps that you can take to apply the knowledge. By design, it's made to be very short. If you have any questions for me, please reach out to me directly on LinkedIn, and I'll do my best to assist and answer. All right, let us begin. So, in every process, before we begin, we need to agree on where do we start. What's the proper point of to start? Let me turn on my pointer. So you might have heard terms lead to order or order to cash. So for example, in lead to order, it means that salespeople bring in, let's say, cold lead, they nurture the lead to the point of customer ordering, and then accounts receivable steps in, invoices, collects cash, etc. Right? And there are more steps to it, and we will discuss it later. But I would prefer to look at the entire process as lead to cash, right? And the purpose for that is the entire company needs to understand that every single person, doesn't matter what department you're in, is really in sales. We all are responsible for the revenue. Okay. This mindset produces entirely different process, right? So we're gonna discuss how that works and what other departments are involved besides the obvious, right? So now that we mentioned that, all right, what is the next step? And this is the time when I introduce the concept of business process mapping. However, the second anyone mentions business process mapping, it turns into the business process napping. And the logical question is, we all understand this is important. Why are we all tuning out the second anyone mentions business process mapping? The reason being is that when anyone mentions business process mapping, this is what you envision. All right, you see a convoluted process, 10,000 consultants organizing flowcharts for you, then another 10,000 consultants explaining what the chart means, then another 10,000 consultants trying to implement it. It wastes money, resources, time, patience, and produces no results, right? Business process mapping is not an exercise in looking busy, right? This is not done so we can all say that, okay, we are trying something, right? The only time business process mapping, it works if it provides actionable information, right? Something you can act on, not theory. So speaking of theory, if you give me 10 minutes, and I promise I will not waste your time with theory anymore. So for the purposes of this workshop, we're going to discuss 4 types of flowcharts, diagrams. We'll be really using this one. However, I want to introduce to you the other 3 just to explain to you, so you also come away with the knowledge of flowcharts and what type of flowchart used when, right? If you notice, they're organized from high level to very detailed, basically on the level of detail they provide, right? So the down the list you go, the more detailed you get, right? And let me now quickly explain to you all the 4 diagrams, and we'll concentrate on the swim lane following. So context diagram, when is it used? If, for example, I'm asking you about your company, and we can spend 3-4 hours You explaining to me, I'm writing it down, who you are working with, etc., right? Or we can draw something like this, where in very simple terms you explain to me all the external parties, and you see like here simply the arrows showing you only the key elements being exchanged. All right, so no details, just general. uh, I usually also like, to map, obviously this is an example, but it's always useful to map, your insurance company, in case of a bank, do you send them any type of reports? If you have that with them, like, and you have covenants reports, your CPAs, etc., right? This type of a chart becomes extremely useful if you're onboarding a new employee, because they immediately can figure out how things work and who you're operating with. And they can also this, for example, if you have a CPA firm and you're onboarding a new CPA firm, or a new insurance broker, or a new law firm, for them it is important to understand all the parties you're dealing with, what protection you need, reporting, etc., right? And this is an extremely simple but effective way to organize that. Okay, now the next, so if you for the purposes of this, right, this workshop, we're going to concentrate on this part, the customer, right? So in this flow chart, customer, right, we have, again, very simple explanation to show you who is the customer facing department or person within your company, right? So we can see which departments they're operating with. And this flow chart, they even touched upon which department internally helps the process, right? But immediately, within 15-20 minutes, I can understand who is customer dealing with, right? Now, the cross-functional flow diagram or swim lane is the one that we're going to be using for this workshop. And it's organized up, you have swim lanes like a swimming pool, hence the swimming lane. The simple boxes of not detailed, just major steps, like milestones in the process, right? And it goes from left to right. The one part that I always like to add to the swim lane diagram on top is customer journey. So think of this as a back office, right? On top, there are certain milestones, the customer experiences. What I mean by this is, even though here it says make purchase, right? How does the customer make purchase? Website, they go to website, what form they fill out, etc., or make a call. How do they get to to the right person, etc., right? So what is the customer experience from their perspective, right? And it's not a bad idea, and I always recommend that once in a while at least to go and try to place an order, or call your own company, call your own customer support, and see how, what's the experience, right? Now, the final chart for this, for this discussion is the process flow chart, and this is the one I suspect most people think of when they imagine flow charts. So this is a department level flow chart. There is the ways you can use it for company wide process, yes, but this becomes extremely useful on a department level. So, for example, imagine you're a new employee, you want in customer support, and you want to know how to answer certain questions, or to transfer a person, whatever the story is, right? You can read entire manual, watch training videos, or you can have something like this next to you, and this can be updated every time a new employee asks a question that is not covered, or some use case comes up with the customer that the flowchart doesn't cover. You update the chart, and this is beyond useful. Also, if you have time and resources, what I like to do is, if I do expand on each step with sort of like, let's say, a video training, or a PDF file that explains more detail, every box can become a link to that file. So now that becomes like a live procedure manual, right? Which is extremely useful. So now we discussed theory. Now let's talk about practice. Again, I want to remind everyone we were discussing lead to cash. I mentioned that it really, most companies break it down, which is not wrong, but the philosophy behind it is basically, you kind of need to think of it as one, right? And to show you that there are more processes that, like, underlining process. I gave you like one more image here. This is a very important point to mention, that do not ever forget about customer support as part of a cash cycle. A happy customer is a repeat customer, right? So if we did not onboard a customer correctly, if we're not taking care of a customer, the customer is not going to return. Our lifetime value is, suffering, because we spend resources, time, both money and labor, etc., to acquire that customer. There's a cost of, of acquisition, and now we're not returning that cost, right? So it's a loss. So customer support is obviously also very important. Usually at this point, there might be disagreements on how to, what's your favorite format, what flow chart you want to use. Well, I don't have anything against this flow chart. A lot of people kind of like to see it as a sales funnel kind of format, or some other format. It really, at the end of the day, it's not important. What is important is there's three items that which I will ask you for, no matter what format you use to document things. Number one, who is accountable for each stage? Okay, so if there is no person accountable for that stage, we have an issue. If what are the KPIs being kept for each tracked, right? So, and I don't mean like, usually for salespeople, KPIs, call that many people, visit that many customers, etc. Right? It doesn't mean the KPIs are only for salespeople. For customer support, you can have a KPI of how long the person is on hold after the call, right? So let's say no longer than a minute. I'm just making up, right? That's your KPI. That's the one that controls the process, right? And the third one is, no matter which format you use, if you notice, I put here customer journey horizontal, customer journey vertical, right? Why did I do that? Because it's a reminder to you that no matter what format you use to organize things, the key element here is customer journey. We're doing all of this to make sure the customers have pleasant journey, and it's a repeat customer. Okay. So I use the proverbial 30, 60, 90, not as a way to sort of dictate how much time it should take. It's more to illustrate the point that it is a timeline, and you do need to move through stages. So if you can do this all, in 30 days, the entire process, this is great. But so this is done to give you a sense of a timeline. If you can do it faster, please do. 30 days. So the first, and this is very important, you need to document as is your process, not how you want it to be, not how you imagine it. You can, do not have aha moments, realizations. Do not criticize as you're documenting. Do not try to adjust anything as you're documenting, unless, of course, you find something, that's severely some process that is something is terribly wrong and customer suffering, etc. Right? Then, of course, you cannot wait. But otherwise, you document. One particular point, to pay attention to, and that's why swim lane diagram is so helpful, is that if you see a process, a customer file, right, proverbial, whether it's digital or real paper file, being bounced between departments, right? As I usually say, like, if it looks like a heartbeat, you have a problem, right? Because every time it crosses the line of a department, that mistakes can happen, right? Then the next thing is identify who's accountable for each stage of the process. You might find out that there's no one accountable for a certain stage. And I always say, and I truly mean it, it's wonderful news, because you found something you can improve immediately. And so treat it as those types of findings, treat them as great news, because it also sets the tone for everyone as you're documenting that, it's not a witch hunt. We're truly working as a group, as a team, to improve everything, right? So it's not about the past, it's about the future, right? So determine which KPIs I tracked for each stage, right? We're talking about 1, 2. Again, you might find out that there are no KPIs being tracked. Again, this is wonderful news. Write it down, move on. So establish how to gain visibility to the KPIs. What I mean by this is even if person is tracking KPI, so you found, let's say, accountable person, you found the KPIs. How do you see them, right? So is it a Excel file? Is it Google Doc? What's the story, right? And verify the accuracy. What I mean by that is it's not necessarily the someone is falsifying data. It's more like the KPIs you're reading. Are they current KPIs? Are they 2 weeks ago, etc.? Can you trust them? Uh, so these 2 points, the establish visibility and accuracy. These 2 points is where do I see them? Can I trust the numbers? Right. The next one is benchmark. Benchmark the time for each step. Customer on hold for 1 minute takes 15 minutes to assign, etc., etc., etc. Do not, again, like I said, do not have aha moments. Do not go like, oh my god, the customer's on the phone 15 minutes. That's not acceptable. That's not gonna go well. The team will start, giving you different benchmarks. Just accept it as is and move on. Document current customer journey to best of your abilities. Now, for this step, and for all the other 3 steps, you're doing the best. You're not seeking perfection here. You want, because you'll be repeating this process over and over as you're improving. Right now, you want to move through this step to the next. Right. The next step is, now that the first 30 days where the purpose was to understand internally what's happening, right? To get sort of like a snapshot. The 60 days is now you benchmarking your numbers. You're getting basically numbers from outside, from your competitors and your peers, right? Because you'll be benchmarking against yours. You get the customer journey from your competitors and peers. And by the way, to be fair to everyone, this does not mean that, I'm not saying that, your competitors are better than you. I'm certain that some things you do better than them, some things they do better than you. Basically, there's a way to learn without reinventing the wheel, right? So now that you went through the benchmarking and understanding customer journey, based on this data and prior steps, where you benchmark your own information, you start to have an understanding of which of your stages require attention, right? We're going to discuss the next slide why sometimes even when your competitor is better at something, it does not necessarily means you need to improve something, but we'll discuss it. Identify any bottlenecks. So the key element to understand that in this, for example, in this image, you have a 6-lane highway, but the cars are not moving at the speed of 6-lane highway. Why? They're being controlled by this, bottleneck, this choke point of 4 lanes. So you investing money, for example, in extra lanes on this highway will produce no results speed-wise. This will control the speed of the process no matter what. So as you're working through the process, find bottlenecks at the beginning of the process, right? And start eliminating them and moving down the line. Okay, unless you find one bottleneck that is like critical, right? But otherwise, always start at the beginning because that will push the process forward. Okay. Next point, ensure the process aligns with overall business goals. Now, this is a very critical point because sometimes it might be where there are no issues with customer support. The customer is extremely happy. However, you also realize that it takes you 3 times the customer support staff to take care of your customers than any other competitor. So in our case, the customer is happy, but there's not something we can scale, right? Because really the difference between growth and scaling up is growing is when your expenses sort of proportionately follow your revenue, right? Scaling up is when you increase your revenue, but the costs, for one reason or another, are not following proportionately. So your profitability grows, right? So economy of scale. So you need to figure out also not only if the process needs to improvement, but also is the process scalable, okay, while staying profitable. Document any assumptions. right? So always write everything down, document, because even the items you might not be able to improve right now, they are the material for next future work, right? So and you'll address them as you're moving through the process. Now this point is will save you incredible amount of money. Gather feedback from stakeholders. So when I say stakeholders, I don't only mean managers. Actually, I'm more interested in feedback from the frontline employees, so to speak, right? The people who actually do the work. Because, and I promise you 100, with 100% certainty, if you give your employees, the feeling, if you make them feel that they're safe, it's safe for them to offer ideas, that they're being heard, that their opinions being valid, it will open up a floodgate of ideas. And I've never ever, like in what 20 years doing that, not seen that work this way, because they will always have better ideas than any consultant, any advisor, anyone, because they are in the process. So if you give them a chance, they will impress you. Now, the last stage, and as I've mentioned before, the three stages, they kind of will repeat themselves, right, in cycles, as you improving, for because this is never ending process. So before you start, you come to the team and tell them, listen, for this stage it takes our competitor 1 minute, it takes us 10 minutes, we suck, right? Before you do that, please try to understand first, do you have the resources to match what your competitors are doing? A simple example would be, let's say you competitor, I'm giving just a general example, but let's say your competitor customer support, the it takes 20 seconds for them to get the customer from point they called to the right person. It takes your team 1 minute. On paper, it's obviously that they're faster and more efficient. However, upon further research, you realize also that they were just recently acquired by private equity fund. The fund dropped an incredible amount of money, and they hired like 5 times, you know, customer support, the size team, right? 5 times bigger than yours. So obviously, going to be faster. So you will try to match it in time by with labor, with software, etc. But if you come to your team and tell them that basically we suck compared to the other team, and you're talking to someone who might be working overtime, late nights, weekends, etc., now they do not feel appreciated. So it's extremely discouraging and demotivating. Right? So we're not gonna do that. The two next items: start implementing internal process improvements and start implementing customer journey improvements. Please note that I listed them separately. They're not the same thing. The internal the back office process improvement is very important, there's no doubt. However, what I care about is customer journey improvement, right? So if something you're doing internally, especially if we spending money, has no effect on the customer, yeah, let's maybe move it down in priority. Let's first make sure what makes our customer happy to be a repeat customer, okay, and bring in new customers. That's number one priority. So as you improving, constantly reevaluate customer journey and test against that. All right. Plan for regular reviews. So we review the process not only because something is wrong with the process, but also review because even in the perfect process, you might find out that something that is done by, let's say, employees can be outsourced to software. Especially now with AI, there are plenty of processes that can be outsourced to a computer, and your regular employees can actually do things no AI can do, right? So always reevaluate and see what tools are available. And of course, measure, measure, measure. If you're not measuring KPIs, if you're not making sure they're visible, that everything is transparent, this is not gonna, progress anywhere. Okay. So what is the next step? The next step is for you to start doing this. Do not concentrate on what software to use, what flowchart to use, etc. Right? The most important thing is for you to start documenting the process. All right. And You will find things you might not like, but that's unfortunately that's the name of the game. However, I promise you, I've never seen a single company, a single client of mine that went through something like this and did not increase the revenue, profitability, etc. Right? So there is a benefit to it. It's work, sometimes unpleasant work because you discover things. Please treat everything as great news. Please respect your team. They're with you, and get you this point. So the next step is the next next step is up, only up, right? Revenue up. I'll see you next week. If you have any questions for me, reach out to me on LinkedIn. And thank you very much.